Hello, 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 and welcome to the Million Dollar Electrician Podcast, where we help home service pros like you supercharge your business and spark up those sales.
I'm Joseph Lucani, and together with my co-host Clay Newmeyer, we're here to share the secrets that have helped electricians sell over $1 million from a single service van.
Now it's time for sales. It's time for scale. It's time to become $1 million electrician. Hello, welcome. Season 2, Episode 1 of the new $1 Million Electrician, here with more value, more power than ever before, and today's no exception. Joe, I'm excited to dive right into this with you and everyone who's listening, because this one habit leads to more broke electricians than anything else, and worse, they think it's saving them money. The average email electrician sells between 30 and 40% of the jobs they quote. And our goal is 80%, man. This is no bueno, if you don't mind me saying. How do you feel about emailing prices over, Joe?
I have a belief that email is where you send presentations that go and die. That's literally the one place that they have. And it's such a shame because people still believe that emailing is the way to get the sales closed. But really, and I hate to call you guys out on it, it's the coward's way out.
It is. So why does it keep happening then? If we know this, I know there's people listening right now, they're like, no, email is saving me time, it's saving me money, and this actually helps us, doesn't hurt us. Why is this happening?
So the reason why is it's actually the path of least resistance. We often don't like to accept that we're the reason why the call isn't going forward. And oftentimes we as electricians are very logic-minded people. Meaning that when we talk about the specs and we talk about the material and we talk about the voltage and amps, that's where we think the value is. When really the value is in the connection. When you remove the connection, all they're left with is the numbers and the parts and the materials and everything that goes into it. So that's where they start getting out of the emotion brain where they should be and instead solely focusing on the logic brain. And once you have a customer in full logic brain, that's when they email it over, it comes back, or can you break this down for me? Or, hey, I'm not understanding this. Why are you charging so much? Because they're trying to compare you to some other number rather than comparing your service to someone else's service.
I think there is an emotional part here too, though. And it's when you're originally in the home of the customer and maybe you're not quite comfortable, or maybe you didn't quite hit it off as well as you did, or maybe you did hit it off and now you've got this little self-objection thinking like, I'm imposing on their time. I need to get out of here. Did you ever feel that, brother?
I mean, yeah. The thing is when I remember when I first started, there was always this fear that I needed to sell, and that was the problem, right? Because when you go out and you're like, I need to sell, that becomes the number one focus. And yeah, when you're in that place, it sometimes tends on being more pushy. And that's where you can start feeling you're taking advantage of people's time. I have a different belief where I say sales isn't something you're doing to someone. It's rather you're doing something for someone. But when you email it over, you're simply giving them a job. Now it's their job to not only go and find this information, it's their job to sit and translate the information, which likely isn't going to be done without outside help. And then it's up to them to determine whether your value stacks against someone else. So if you recognize that's what's happening, it would make complete logical sense that they would need other estimates to compare to, or they would need an outside consultant like the handy cousin or the general contractor or the neighbor to come and review your proposal. Doesn't that make sense?
Yeah, it does, man. It does. And I can't help but think and just kind of, empathize with everyone who's out there maybe running too many calls a day seems to be where one of the roots of this
Yep.
problem is. Maybe you're trying to run 5 or 6 calls a day if you're lucky to get that many leads. And I mean, even quick math, right? 6 calls, if you're only closing, 30% of those, you're going to get what, roughly two sold out of those? That's a lot of work to do for just a couple of calls sold. And based on that level of connection, there's huge missed opportunities here because you're not, like you said, building advanced rapport by coming back and presenting, or even presenting while you're still there, if you could. And for that reason, not only could you double your conversion rate here and maybe be getting 4 out of 6 jobs and quickly realize, oh, wait, I can't do 6 jobs a day, not service calls. That's a lot. But also what would happen to your average ticket? And let's even look at what's happening with your average ticket. If you're only selling 2 jobs at the average 500 that seems to be prominent in the industry, 500-600 bucks, you're
Mhm.
talking about $1,000 day. And that's exactly why, even in our podcast group right now, Million Dollar Electrician, where people are conversing about our playbook that you can get to help you launch this $1 million service. And it's exactly why people are saying, come on, you can't average $2,500 days.
You know what? I really think it's amazing when you break it down that way, because I almost want to isolate it a little bit further.
All right.
People take on more calls because they're emailing it over. And I want to explain what I mean by that. So if you email your quotes over, you have a far lower chance of closing, meaning that you need to up the volume. So you up the volume and take on more calls. But in order to complete those calls in a timely manner, you do less time per call, thus increasing or decreasing the value you're providing to that client. That client receives less value and then needs to compare you to someone else because you've already operated at a lower price point now. So the problem is just by emailing it, it starts to compound the problem more and more. Instead, if you recognize and said, I'm going to present in person, you allot for more time per call, meaning you can take less calls per day, but those calls have higher impact and the higher chance of a continued repeat business. So by the thing that you think is actually saving you time, it's actually hamstringing you and making you work way harder for far less money.
Can I add to the personal pain side of this?
By all means.
There's something that all of us do that's hiding beneath the surface of what you just said, too. And it's a recency bias problem. See, what happens when you leave that residence and you think, okay, later on, I'm going to build the quote for this project.
Mm-hmm.
Do people usually do it right away?
Nope.
Do they usually
Nope.
get it done that day, even?
I mean, we've seen people come in like the day of the presentation being like, hey, I haven't built the presentation at this point. What do I do? And for those individuals, it's right, pray at that point because you really don't have a lot of options. I personally feel that you should do your presentation within 48 hours of you meeting the customer the first time, so that when you mentally review and walk through their home and you review the conversations and those moments that you had that really connected with those clients, you're speaking to those things rather than what was I doing on that call? It was 3 weeks ago. Oh, I'm gonna have to reschedule and ask them to have a little more time to view it one more time.
Oh, there's evil there. There's evil
Mm-hmm.
there, brother. Rescheduling now. So here's
Mm-hmm.
what happens. Let's go into the shoes of this for a moment. You're at the
I'm down.
customer's house, you're feeling the pressure to leave. That's your process. Anyway, we're just going to email a quote over. What your customer doesn't know is you've already got your 3 quotes behind. You've already rescheduled someone else. Does that sound familiar so far? And
Mm-hmm.
so you're almost without integrity offering a commitment to this customer by telling them, oh, I'll have this quote to you in 48 hours, when really you know that just added a fourth to the list that you have to do. And are you going to do
Mm-hmm.
theirs first before the other three or last after the other three? And then how accurate is this quote going to be? Not to mention, how short would your messaging be? Are you really going to be able to explain your solution well in text in the first place, let alone
Nope.
when it's at the bottom of the stack, now late getting there? And then you depend on the likelihood of whether or not they see the light at the end of the tunnel with you and choose to work with you. Meanwhile, you feel the stress of what? Family wants more time. You've spent more time at
Mm-hmm.
night now because you're well behind. You've made commitments beyond your availability, and you've got payroll to meet, and you don't even know when the next job's coming. It's crazy and it adds up that much. Next thing you know, you're rolling around in the bed, can't sleep. Oh, did I overbid it? Maybe that's why they're not calling back. Should I call them? Oh, wait, worse, did I underbid it? I had a bunch of crazy quotes going through my head that day. If I underbid it and got it, now we're really in trouble. I wonder if they'll pay me on time. Wait, do they even hire me? That sound familiar, Joe?
It sounds like the kind of thoughts that we have when we were first starting in business and just really not knowing where you're going. The closest expression I can think of is imagine that you're blind and you're put into a hallway and you know at the end is the solution. You can do nothing but just stumble and feel around and be like, I don't know if I'm doing the right thing. Am I even going in the right direction? I don't know. But by the end of it, you're covered in bumps, scrapes, and bruises, and you eventually figure out how to get to the door. Now, the thing is that's why when we've designed our program and how we do our presentations, it's going to look so different than the kind of presentation that would be emailed over. Specifically because the email over presentations need to sell for you. That's the problem with them. If you send an email presentation, you need to describe your warranties. You need to describe your values. You need to describe all the things that are going to go into this project because they're going to be understood and read by a layperson. What we do is we make it like a presentation where they're meant to be spoken points. And as a result, you can have a much more concise, more professional looking presentation that looks less like a contract, but also is far more impactful and easier to get through. So if it's easier to get through, looks less threatening, and has a higher yield, why aren't people doing it?
It's a great question, man. It's a great question. So let's play a game of what if with the math. Since I
Okay.
introduced the negative math, let's introduce the positive math. Is it fair to say that just presenting, ignore all the other factors, that presenting in person could make use of other sales levers like the ones that
Mhm.
we teach? A quick one, we're not going to go into it here, but what about the law of contrast? That says, hey, if I lift a heavy bucket first and then a light one, that the lighter bucket feels even lighter.
Mm-hmm.
You can only have that work for you if you've got multiple solutions and you start by offering the top first.
Correct.
That
100%.
alone improves conversion rate, doesn't it?
It does because I literally have had situations where the customer, and even further, you can be amazed what the customer might want because you'll have some economy buyer who's like, I'm not spending more than $900. But then you present and you build the value and you describe your top option. I've had customers tell me, no, that actually sounds more than what I think it was. And you end up taking a higher option. And it's like, this is insane. But I never would have gotten it if I didn't do the presentation in that format. They need to see what's best first, and then what comes after only seems like you're the hero because you're presenting five more solutions that cost less.
And if you did that, couldn't you see how you could go from a 33% conversion rate to a 66%? And all
Mm-hmm.
of a sudden, just run 4 calls a day and close maybe 3 of those on average and get your
Mm-hmm.
average ticket up double that? I mean, could we really hit $1,000 average ticket? Now, all of a sudden, we're actually closing 2,500 to 3 grand on average a day. And all we did was stop emailing it over, guys. So, what is stopping you? Why are you an email electrician? If you're still doing this, we're trying to call an audible here for you. What is holding you back from ending this brutal habit, admitting that it's not saving you? And we didn't even talk about the cost of the leads that you're burning in the process. Joe,
Oh,
is there
man.
anything else you want to add to that pile, brother?
I mean, other than us getting into the cost of the leads, which we can always cover in another episode, but really at the end of the day, I want to say if you're listening to this and you're still with us at a point, emailing it over is like drinking poison. What it means is that it may go down easy. It may taste sweet because you don't have to come back and deal with it. You say it's off my calendar and it's in the air. But all the time up to this that you've poured into the customer, it's like pouring water into a sieve. You pour it in only to watch it drip out. All that effort is wasted and lost, and all you're left with is the dregs that stuck to the bottom. And no one wants to drink that.
I agree, man. What do you say we end this with a quick objection handle to give maximum value, and then we'll see everyone again next week after that.
Let's do it.
All right, Joe. Hey, I appreciate you coming by and designing some solutions. I really just want to talk this over with my wife tonight. We don't buy anything same day. Is there any way that you could just email these solutions over to us?
I'd be happy to help you with that. So, just for starters, I know we presented a range of options. Which of these were you looking to have emailed over?
Hopefully all of them, man. I just want to, like I said, we like to go over everything on the table and just
Mhm.
talk privately about it.
Okay, and I can understand where you're coming from. But do you mind if I ask you a question?
Yeah, please.
Now, we designed a full spread. Like, obviously, we've got from the finest money can buy, full renovations, all the way to the most bare minimum where we're just cobbling it back together. Is it safe to say that all of these are being equally considered? Is that what I'm understanding?
Well, no, if I'm being honest there, you're right. It's quite a range, and I appreciate that
Mm-hmm.
you did that. The top one's definitely too much, and the bottom one
Okay.
doesn't seem like enough.
Well, congratulations. We already got it down to four. So that's awesome. So, what of these options do you usually like when it comes to you and your wife doing things? Do you find that you're doing things more on like the premium level, more in the mid range, or more with the economy?
You know, that's a great question. I think that we're trying to save money on this, but I
Mm-hmm.
also notice how the silver option included some work done by you that we're not interested in doing, if I'm being honest.
Okay. So, why don't we get rid of the silver one too?
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, if that's one thing you're not interested in, then that's totally fine. I never want to feel like I'm pushing you to do something you don't want. So congratulations, we got it down to 3. So realistically, we're stuck here with the bronze, the economy, and the base. Oh, sorry. We delivered it. So what are we down to? The silver, bronze, and economy. Yes. So then we're gonna have gold, bronze, and economy at this point. Had to mentally get myself into the
That's all right,
presentation
man.
that's not
You
in
got
front
it.
of me. Okay. So there's a lot of different ways we can help you with this.
Mhm.
Obviously, we have some on the more premium range, and we have some more on the economy range. Now, when it's something that you'd be describing to your wife, do you mind if I hear how would you be describing it?
I think we would say basically, Joe came by, gave us a range of solutions.
Mm-hmm.
There was a couple different options. I
Mm-hmm.
personally felt that, we were trying to keep costs low, but we also didn't want to do certain portions of this work. But he also included a couple of things here that are kind of exciting and along what we were talking about in the past. So I wanted you to have all 3 of those as an option to help me choose.
I love that. And I gotta say, you've done a really good job thinking about how we're gonna do it. And by you doing it that way, it would actually save us a ton of time. But that's not the goal. The goal is not to make you save us time, it's for us to save you time. So this is what I suggest. What I can do for you is not only can I take these options and get them ready to send over, but what I'll also do is I'm going to break them down to another extent so you can understand more of what's really going into them. I'll come back when you and your wife are available. And what I'll do is we'll show you all the different choices that are available so that you have complete understanding at that point. There'll be no pressure to move forward if it's not something you feel is the perfect fit at that time. And if I'm not the right fit and you feel that it's obviously not me, then I'll even stay here, crumple my presentation, throw it against the wall, and I'll help you go through any other options you have, even if they're not with us, to make sure that you had the best choice for your dollar. If I said I could do that, what would happen then?
It sounds really good. You'd take that extra time with us?
Yeah. I mean, it's an honor to work with you. At the end of the day, I want to ensure that you have a complete understanding of what you're paying for, because anything less than that is less than the best kind of service I can provide.
Yeah, sounds good. Joe, thanks for joining me in that, brother. I'm going to let that go there and not be a complete pain in the ass. But what I love about the way you handle objections is you're just going back to your process, falling back on your truth, falling on the
Mhm.
sword. There's nothing wrong with anything you're saying there. It's not pressure. It's absolutely helping us narrow our thoughts, our decisions, and clearly, far, far ahead of any email that I'd have to decipher myself and decide on a solution there. So thank you, brother.
It's really my pleasure. Occasionally, it's fun being put on the spot because okay, sometimes I hear in class where people will be like, "Oh, well, you were on the podcast, and possible you just rehearsed it," and then they see it done live, and it's the same as we do it on the podcast. So I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to get pushed every now and then. I appreciate you.
You got it, man. And that's a wrap for today's episode of the $1 Million Electrician Podcast.
We hope you're buzzing with new ideas that charged up to take your business to the next level.
So don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share the show with fellow electricians. Together, we'll keep the current flowing.